So much happened around the NFL today, from a veteran wide receiver one getting released, trades, extensions, players you thought might get franchise tagged not getting tagged after all, and more. Basically, you name it, it happened. And in today's video, I'm gonna talk about it right after. Good God Almighty, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's just get right into it. The Philadelphia Eagles have been busy today. First, for the second day in a row, they cut ties with a veteran cornerback. Yesterday, the team released Darius Slay, freeing up $4.3 million in cap space by doing so. Well, today, they informed James Bradberry that they're going to release him when the new league year starts, a move that will save them another $2.1 million. Bradberry, like Slay, is getting up there in age. He's going to be 32 years old next season, and he did miss the entirety of the 2024 NFL season with a torn Achilles that he suffered in training camp. It's hard to see a 32-year-old corner coming off of an Achilles tear getting another chance somewhere else, but you never know. As for the Eagles, they can pretty comfortably release these guys, knowing that Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are going to be holding things down in the secondary for years to come. And for the biggest news of the day coming out of Philly, the Eagles signed Saquon Barkley to a 2-year, $41.2 million contract extension. I thought I was hallucinating like Aaron Rodgers on a darkness retreat when I saw the news, but it's true and very well deserved, to be clear. This extension makes him the first running back in NFL history to earn over $20 million per year, and it also includes $36 million fully guaranteed at signing, plus an additional $15 million in incentives and escalators. He's now under contract with the team through 2028, and while extending a player just 1 year into a 3-year contract is typically unheard of and pretty risky, Jason from Over the Cap is speculating that the deal is most likely backloaded with higher cap hits, but most of the guaranteed money is towards the front. Not really sure yet, but maybe the craziest part about all this is that somehow reduced Saquon's cap hit for this upcoming season almost in half. His cap hit was going to be close to $14 million, but now it's around $7 million. It's just another way Howie Roseman, the Eagles GM, manipulates the salary cap, and another reason why he's been able to build such a powerhouse of a roster. Anyway, I'm definitely very happy for Saquon Barkley. In under 1 calendar year, he went from being with the New York Giants, that train wreck over there, to signing with the Eagles, setting the franchise rushing record. He then led the league in rushing and became the 9th running back to go over 2,000 yards, won Offensive Player of the Year, won a Super Bowl, and now became the highest paid player at his position in NFL history. Next up, another couple players got paid today. The Packers and kicker Brandon McManus reached an agreement today on a 3-year, $15.3 million deal, including a $5 million signing bonus. This puts him right around $5.1 million average per year, which is outside of the top 10 as far as kickers are concerned, but a well-deserved payday for the veteran kicker. Then the Dallas Cowboys and defensive tackle Osa Odighizuwa have agreed on a 4-year, $80 million deal worth $58 million guaranteed. I mentioned yesterday how Dallas was planning on slapping the franchise tag on him if they couldn't agree to terms on a deal before the deadline today, but obviously that didn't need to happen. Odighizuwa had been a stud in the trenches, racking up 172 tackles, 13.5 sacks, 28 tackles for loss, and 2 forced fumbles in his 4 years with the team. It's really a win-win situation for both sides here. Trenches win championships. We all know that after watching the Eagles dominate. Then Odighizuwa gets life-changing money with a good amount of guarantees, while the Cowboys also lock up a young ascending player without breaking the bank. The $20 million per year he's now set to earn slots him in as the 15th highest paid interior defensive lineman in the league. Some think he definitely would have gotten more in free agency, but it seems like he preferred to stay with the team that drafted him in the 3rd round of the 2021 NFL Draft. The Cowboys have some pretty big contracts at the moment, with potentially another monster deal on the way. Dak Prescott's deal was 4 years, $240 million, making him literally the highest paid player in NFL history. Then CeeDee Lamb, he's making $136 million over 4 years and is currently the 2nd highest paid receiver in the league, at least for now, until Jamar Chase signs his deal and pushes CeeDee back to 3rd. However, it was actually reported today that the Cowboys have restructured CeeDee's contract and created $20 million in cap space by doing so. That could be some extra money to throw around in free agency, or they could be looking to iron out a deal with Micah Parsons before the start of the season, or even here very soon. They've been in negotiations with him, which I touched on in yesterday's video, but some are speculating that Micah's annual value on a new deal could reach up to $45 million per year, which is $11 million more than Nick Bosa and a truck ton of money. Bosa, by the way, is currently the highest paid defensive player in the league. So yeah, having the highest paid player in the entire league, the highest paid defensive player in the league, and the second/third highest paid receiver in the league, all on the same team, is pretty insane. You know what else is insane? Caleb Williams taking the third most sacks in a season of all time last year. Well, it looks like Ben Johnson isn't effing around and is getting right to work on rebuilding that O-line, because today it was announced that the Bears are trading a 2025 6th-round pick to the LA Rams for guard Jonah Jackson. He was actually with Ben Johnson in Detroit from 2020 to 2023, so there's definitely some familiarity there. He made the Pro Bowl in 2021, then once his rookie deal expired after the 2023 season, he cashed in on a 3-year, $51 million deal with the Rams. Well, the Bears are going to inherit the rest of his contract as is, so they'll be paying him around $17.5 million this year. Then the $17 million left in 2026 isn't guaranteed, so there's an out if things don't work as hoped this season. I would rather go and get somebody like Jonah Jackson than the potential what if on a late round draft pick, personally. At the very least, Jackson will provide the Bears O-line with some much needed experience, and even though he's only played 5 seasons in the league, he has 1,500 more career snaps than Chicago's current career snap leader in Braxton Jones. I imagine Chicago is only getting started with the O-line project and definitely expect them to draft at least 1 or 2 more this April. Next up, a big name wide receiver is hitting the open market, and that is the aging but still very talented wideout Davante Adams. That's right, the Jets released him earlier today to free up basically $30 million in cap space. It was an absolute no-brainer, but that means they traded their 3rd-round pick away for a guy that only played in 11 games, and they still finished 5-12. That was certainly a move that the New York Jets would make. In fairness to their current front office, though, that deal was made by Joe Douglas, who has since been fired. Darren Muji is the new GM and parting ways with Aaron Rodgers, and now Davante Adams, and maybe one more that I'll talk about in a second, are his first big moves on the job. And again, this is actually going to free up around $30 million in cap space, so a no-brainer move for this new Jets regime. As for potential Davante landing spots, Ian Rappaport had this to say shortly after the news broke. Quote, "While the assumption has been that Davante Adams wants to play with Aaron Rodgers, and historically that's been the plan, my understanding is the pull of being on the West Coast is very real." Well, that narrows it down pretty significantly. You have the 49ers, who just traded away Deebo Samuel, the Chargers, which would be nasty with him, Herbert, and Ladd McConkey, not gonna lie. Then there's the Rams and Seahawks, technically all the way up north on the West Coast, but I don't think that's what he has in mind. Honestly, there's plenty of teams that need the wide receiver help. The Patriots could be a good fit, as Drake May could really benefit from a bona fide wide receiver 1, and they have the most cap space in the league heading into next season. All that to say, if the West Coast thing isn't a deal breaker, there's going to be plenty of teams out there that will likely be interested in signing him. Then, one of the last pieces of the Aaron Rodgers Jets could also be on the move, as New York gave another wideout, Allen Lazard, permission to seek a trade. They are open to bringing him back on the team, but he'd probably have to take a big pay cut in order to do so, and I also doubt anybody trades for him, so he's most likely going to be moving on here soon. So it looks like 2 30-plus-year-old receivers in New York are going to be moving on, looking elsewhere, and this move will free up another $7-ish million by moving on from Lazard, so it makes sense. Aside from the Jets, another team to clear up a significant amount of cap space today was the Seattle Seahawks. They released 4 players today, with those being offensive tackle George Fant, safety Rayshon Jenkins, defensive end Draymond Jones, and defensive tackle Roy Robertson Harris. Seattle was $6.8 million over the cap before these moves, but these releases just freed up around $28 million, and that's not including what they'll save by cutting Tyler Lockett, which they're expected to do if he can't agree to a reworked deal. Lockett could save the team an additional $17 million if they move on from him, but we'll see again if they agree to a much cheaper reworked deal or not. And then if all that wasn't enough, the Minnesota Vikings officially chose not to use the franchise tag on Sam Darnold ahead of the deadline today. And before I talk about that, I just want to say this tweet from Adam Schefter regarding the franchise tag is pretty insane because teams barely used it this year, which goes against the decades-long trend. He said this: only 2 players, T. Higgins and Trey Smith, were targeted this year, the fewest numbers of players tagged since 1994 when Eric Green and Henry Thomas were tagged. There were 8 players given the franchise tag last year, and there have been at least 6 players tagged in each year going back to 2019. In the previous years, the average number of players given the franchise tag was 9.2 per year, and only 2 this year, which is pretty wild. Anyway, regarding Sam Darnold in particular, there has reportedly been discussions between he and the Vikings about a potential shorter-term deal to keep him in Minnesota with mutual interest, but I personally think Darnold is going to gauge his value in free agency first, especially since he's not getting tagged. I'm assuming he will gather a ton of interest, and this is his first real chance to cash in on a boatload of money because of the season he just had, even if that means playing for a team that is not set up for nearly as much success as the Minnesota Vikings. Great coach, great roster, all that. J.J. McCarthy is currently the only quarterback signed to Minnesota's roster right now, and with him missing all of last season with a torn meniscus, there may be a bit of hesitation to roll into next year with him as their QB1, but with free agency starting Monday, we're going to start seeing a lot of major dominoes fall very soon, and I'm ever so curious to see what becomes of Sam Darnold. Will he stay? Will he go? How much of a role will money, which normally plays a big role, but how much will that play into Sam Darnold's factor? Return to a place you know you have what it takes and a roster built around you and a great coach, and then JJ may not even be the starter next year, or get a much bigger paycheck and go somewhere else. The Raiders is just one example. There's a bunch of teams looking, so I'm ever so curious to see what becomes of him. Let me know where you think he might end up yourself, and with that, I'll see y'all next time.